This is about your question. When should you say enough? There, when it comes to that moment or that point in time, that's exactly why we do sadhana. That's precisely why we do bhakti or why we pray. So we have the wisdom as well as the strength or the courage to drop this body when it's time to do so and not cling to it just because we can breathe a few more breaths. His question is, so he lost a loved one, and that person was suffering from cancer, went through multiple treatments, most of which are painful. And as you undergo those treatments, the quality of your life deteriorates, like it just tanks. You're basically just breathing in a skeleton. So the question is, it got him reflecting on the reality of human existence as well as his own life, that if, God forbid, if somebody is going through that, what is the moment, what is that point when you say, I no longer wish to undergo these treatments. Instead, I choose to leave this body. Instead, I choose to die a peaceful death. Correct? That's basically it. I think it's easier said than done. Anybody who has not undergone a disease where the prognosis is quite poor or very uncertain, it's easier said than done that we may say that, oh, when it comes to me, I will not take such treatments. Instead, I will just leave. But what often happens when you are first diagnosed with a problem, with a disease like that, the doctors, you will go to them, they will say, look, there is perhaps this novel treatment, there is perhaps this treatment or that treatment that you can take, which might help you save. Then without it, you're dying for sure, but with it, you may live, or you may die a bit later. So that desire to live is very strong. Usually people have responsibilities or attachments, or sometimes none of those, but they just want to live. They think, oh, now I actually sat down to breathe, I was free from my responsibilities and was really looking forward to live my life, and here now suddenly death is knocking at my door. What do I do? So I'll give you a little story, which is a real life story, but I must also remind you that I'm not an advocate of saying or the philosophy that you should not pursue the main course of treatment and instead go for alternative therapies. You know, there are people who would say, oh, try not mainstream. Anything non-allopathic is not mainstream in my eyes, whether that's Ayurvedic or homeopathic or other medicine system like Greek and so on. So there was this person in Canada, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and the doctors gave him 4 months to live. They said, look, get your affairs in order, you've got 4 months, and that's all you have. So rather than going for the treatment, he said, as it is, I have only 4 months to live. Now, if I'm gonna go down, I want to go down with a splash and not just sink quietly into the ocean. So he left everything as is, took a rucksack, and left about a journey of self-discovery. He said, for the next 4 months, I am not going to take any stress of anything. All that could have been, should have been, would have been, all that was done wrong to me, all the things I wanted to do and couldn't do, all those things I am not going to pay attention to. This moment is what I have, and 4 months is all I have, and I'm going to make the most of it. So he set about his journey, and it so happened that even 23 years later, he was still alive. Those 4 months extended to 23 years when he just abandoned the idea of attachment to anything, when he refused to take stress. Now, cancerous cells, talking about cancer for a moment, they thrive in an oxygen-free environment. So nobody's immune from cancer. Especially once you are like 70 plus, more than 95% of people would have been or will be detected with some form of cancer once you're like 70 plus. It's just natural order of things in human body. But let's say in the event of cancer, one can reduce the probability by having a very healthy lifestyle, by having, by exercising regularly and so on, and by understanding how to manage their stress. Having said that, this answer is not about cancer per se. This is about your question, when should you say enough? There, when it comes to that moment or that point in time, that's exactly why we do sadhana. That's precisely why we do bhakti or why we pray. So we have the wisdom as well as the strength or the courage to drop this body when it's time to do so and not cling to it just because we can breathe a few more breaths. And that requires courage. In Jainism, there is a beautiful concept, I forget the exact term, where you can take a vrata and you'll say for the next 40 days or until my body ceases to exist or until my breath stops, I am not going to eat or drink. If you don't eat or drink, naturally there will be a moment in time when your system will shut down, and then you'll have a peaceful passage. So there can be no rule of thumb that when you are a certain age or when your disease progresses to a certain level or the quality of life deteriorates to a certain level, you should give up your body. Nothing like that. I think it depends on it varies, it's based on case by case basis. It depends on an individual's preference. And from that perspective, Switzerland is the perfect destination. Other than Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, they also take your prana if you want. So euthanasia is perfectly legal, and whether it's physician-assisted dying or assisted suicide or assisted death, in many developed economies of the world, it's now a legal concept. If you are diagnosed with something that's terminal or the quality of life is just not there, you can choose to die, and they'll inject you and you die a peaceful death. Of course, there are people who suffer from grave mental illnesses. I feel they should also be able to choose when they want to die, but they cannot at the moment. Science, even though well advanced, does not recognize that you can have a very poor quality of life if your brain isn't coping with you, cannot face the challenges and the rigors of this world. So I think the least this world can do is to let you die in peace. The least this world can do is give you the right to choose when you wish to go. I don't think, and that's an opinion. I'm not a policy maker. I'm not part of the executive branch or legislature or anything like that. And my opinions don't hold any meaning for that matter. But this is my personal opinion, and I stand by it, that every individual should be extended the courtesy to choose when they want to leave this planet. Sometimes life does become unbearable. Is it worth it to be confined to a life where you don't want to live anymore? And that's really the benchmark. Not necessarily whether you can do the things you want to do at one point in time. If you're not taking care of your health, like I wrote recently quoting that book, Outlive, that the health span and lifespan are two different things. So you may live till 80, 90, 100, but those, the last decade or last few years is what we call marginal years. You won't be able to even make yourself a cup of tea or something like that. If you want to have a healthy life towards the very end, then it requires sacrifice today in terms of watching what you eat. Like, I love desserts, but I don't eat them at all. Doesn't matter what, I just don't touch. Because it's sugar. It has no benefit to the human body. Once in a blue moon, I might cheat, but usually not. So it requires, every morning I'm working out in my gym 5 days a week. I would rather be doing my work. I would rather be doing other things. Sometimes I'm working till 3 a.m, but I still get up and do my training in the morning. I'd rather be sleeping, hopefully, but not possible. So if you want to maintain a certain quality of life, there are very practical aspects to it. If you're overweight and you also tend to take a bit of stress, it is almost a given. You will have hypertension, high blood pressure or low blood pressure, or hypertension. You will have some cardio problem waiting for you. You're very likely to have diabetes, and you will have problems in your joints and other issues with your body, and you will feel depressed more frequently than you'd like to, because the body is not in order. And if you, every 10 years, I would say in fact every 5 years, one must reflect on what they're eating and reduce the quantity. One easy way of staying fit is chew well and eat less. I always say, if you are at a moment where you say, maza aa gaya. Wow, you've eaten too much. Because one easy way of being healthy is मुंह से कभी ये वाक्य ना निकले, मजा आ गया. अगर जीना है तो मजा नहीं ले सकते. One easy way of being healthy is to eat less. You're always hungry. If you're always hungry, you are doing well. You will live longer, and you will, the probability, remember, there are no guarantees on earth about anything. Nobody can guarantee anything, but you can manage the probability. You can increase the odds of staying fit or being healthy. You can read the examples of those people who are falling flat in the gym, and you say, "Arey, gym mein wo bhi mar gaya, wo bhi mar gaya, wo bhi mar gaya. Mujhe gym nahi jana," right? We don't know the cause. I highly doubt they died because they were doing exercise. I think prior to that moment, there were a lot of things they should have done that they didn't do. And when this moment arrived, Carl thought gym is an easy place to get these people, not meaning to make light of anybody's passing, but you get the idea. So it boils down to each individual. When Swami Vivekananda's two favorite people died, one of his colleague monks and other disciples found him crying. So one was the king of Khetri, Rajasthan, who was a key sponsor of his Chicago visit, as well as who paid every month 100 rupees as pension to Vivekananda's mother. So he passed away. And the other one was his disciple called Mr. Goodwin or somebody who was a stenographer and who would document his discourses. When both died, Swami Vivekananda was crying. And this monk said to him, "Look, you're a sannyasi. Why are you crying?" He said, what kind of absurd question is that? The beautiful thing about Swami Vivekananda was, it was impossible for anybody to bully him or ask him anything that they think should be asked. He was such a fiercely independent thinker and operator, he would choose his answers. He said, what kind of an absurd question is that? I'm a sannyasi, not a stone. He said that realization, that sannyasa, which is devoid of prem and bhavana, love and feeling, is not sannyasa, has no place in sannyasa, has no place in liberation. I would rather not have it. So when you walk the path of awakening, you develop a natural sense of empathy towards yourself and towards others around you. And one classic sign of what empathy is, I mean, it's very hard to define, right? Anybody could say, I'm very empathetic, whereas they might be emphatic, about their own opinions. So anybody could feel, I have a general sense of empathy. But one unfailing sign of empathy is the natural ability to respect the decisions, the life, the space of others. That's what empathy really means. That, look, I may not understand completely why you are doing what you're doing, but I'm not holding it against you. That I'm okay to coexist. So you develop that naturally. And as you develop that naturally, you gain that wisdom automatically when you feel it's time for me to go. Krishantah sharirastham bhut gramam chetsa ma chav antha sharirastham tanvid asraya nishchayan. Kantai, those who weaken their bodies, they don't realize that I am in every single element of this body, and as a result, they are hurting me. So there comes a moment when you have to realize, is this weakening my body? Or is this strengthening my body, the treatments I'm taking? What is the real view behind it? And from that angle, if you look at the life of Osho, I thought it was quite remarkable. When that man thought, enough, bahut pravachan kar diye, bahut bhashan de diya, time for me to go, he asked his physician to inject him, although that is not the story that's popular, but if somebody was to read between the lines, that's the conclusion I would arrive at. Because the speech his physician gave the next day, he said, look, last night, we're all sitting there, he just passed away. He said, look, there's no point living. There comes a moment when you say, I've had enough. I've seen enough. I've seen everything there is. Like Seinfeld was saying, he said he's now 60 plus. He said, when I'll be in 70s, I won't even have to answer people's questions. He said, I can just choose to be just, that would be my standard response, he said. Now, he said, when my grandkids or somebody, they're saying, hey, look there, or my children, look dad. He said, I don't turn, whatever it is, I've seen it, he said. There's nothing fascinating you can show me. Whatever it is that you wish to show me, I've seen it already. And that comes, not necessarily that comedy, but that wisdom comes upon awakening and reflection that, look, I have tasted everything there is to taste in this world. Now my body is not coping with me. So maybe it's time for me to drop this cloth. And then there's a test. If you really believe in rebirth, you have nothing to complain. If you don't believe in rebirth and you believe in some kind of heaven and hell, even then you have nothing to complain. If you've done great things, you'll end up in a peaceful place. If you've done naughty things, you'll end up in a very fun place. all the all the spicy people are in hell, I heard. So if you don't believe in any of those, and you say, well, we just merge, I don't know what happens, then what are you afraid of?